How stealth game guards seen here. School of Stealth, Part 1.
There aren't many genres with such a strong core fantasy as the stealth game. These are games about staying unseen and then striking from the shadow.
Bro, Splinter Cell was so good. I think I played like Splinter Cell 1, 2, and 3, peaking in Chaos Theory. And then there was like some other one. Wasn't it like Blacklist or something? Like after I think I played all the Splinter Cells. Oh my god. They need to make another Splinter Cell. Like god dang. Like Splinter Cell was like just you're a badass, dude. Oh man.
About outsmarting an entire army of enemies without them even knowing you exist. These are games about spies, assassins, and Batmen.
Bro, like early Assassin's Creed, it was kind of cool, but it was very crude with like the whole stealth thing or whatever. But it was good. They had like a good game going. They had the whole puppeteer mechanics, your lethal arm, non-lethal arm, your legs button, and then your head button. It was like that on controller. And I think Assassin's Creed was like the first game to do like daytime stealth correctly. Well, more or less. Like blending in crowds, like climbing on top of buildings. I thought it was cool at the time. I mean, it still kind of is, but like, the formula is, been through the ringer.
But making this fantasy work means balancing a number of complicated game systems, from enemy awareness to information gathering to robust detection systems. Get any of them wrong, and the whole thing can crumple in on itself.
Yeah.
So welcome to the School of Stealth. This is a short GMTK mini-series about how stealth games work.
Ooh.
In each episode, I'm going to take one system from the stealth game formula and break down how it works, looking, where necessary, at the technical side of things, the design considerations, and the end user experience. For episode 1, we need to start where most stealth games begin, with the player being hidden, and then ask ourselves, how do guards actually see and hear the player? Ultimately, guards in games are given virtual eyes and ears that are designed to simulate the two main human senses.
So eyes and ears, bro. Like, yeah, it's a game, and some of these games might have like difficulty sliders, but like the eyes, essentially all the NPCs, the eyes are like this. They just walk around with like tunnel vision on, and anybody like right here, like on their sides, they just don't see. And then same thing with the ears. Like if you're sprinting up, yeah, they're probably gonna hear you, but if you're like even like kind of crouching up or whatever, it's like in real life you can hear someone kind of crouch walking behind you, dude, with those big ass like stealthy military rubber sole boots and whatnot on top of the gravel. Yeah, that motherfucker hears you in real life, dude.
Sight and sound. To simulate vision, video game guards typically have a view cone, which is an invisible, cheese-like entity that is stuck to the enemy's face. If the player character enters the cone, they get
It's go time.
detected. It's a touch more complicated than that, of course. A simple cone would allow characters to stay unseen even if they were right next to the enemy, so more complex shapes are often used. In Splinter Cell Blacklist, there's a basic vision cone for the guard's primary sightline, but a second, much wider box to simulate peripheral vision, and even a small area behind the guard to mimic that sixth sense of knowing when someone's just over your shoulder.
Really? Okay, so that was probably why that you couldn't hang around like right behind them, because I remember playing this one and I thought this version of fucking Splinter Cell was awesome. Yeah, you couldn't hang around behind somebody for very long they got the simulated sixth sense thing or whatever, but I didn't really pay attention to that as I was playing it, because I think I played this game twice or three times. I don't remember. Like once stealth and then and then one's like all actiony, gun shooty. And yeah, this was awesome.
Developers will also need to consider the height of the cone, depending on whether the player should be able to hide when they're above.
It was so freaking cool when you nailed somebody with like a pipe kill or something, or like the chaos theory, like the splits. Like it's through like a dark hall. Like you had to do it with a dark hallway. That's why every Splinter Cell game, there's the meme where it's like you see a light, you shoot it out, you know, and then you set up. And Chaos Theory introduced this like split jump, like you run up the side of a wall, Jackie Chan style, and you do a split, and then you just hang out there, and then you wait for the guard to walk under you, and then once he's under you, you just bop him in the head. Oh my god, that was like peak awesomeness.
Of enemies. To know if the player is in cover, a game will typically use a raycast, which is basically when an invisible line is drawn between two elements to see, in this case, if anything is in the way. You can make this more complex to catch moments of partial cover. So in Splinter Cell, the enemy raycasts to 8 different bones in Sam Fisher's player model, and will only spot him if a certain number are visible.
Oh, I didn't realize that, because like you see in that little clip, he's like, obviously you see his head, dude. Like in real life, you see someone's head sticking out. It's like, bop, you're gonna bop that shit, dude. But like, I get the whole, I need to spot 8 points of his body to then engage him to make the game a little more like, I don't know, engaging for the player or whatever, like gamey. Because if it wasn't like that, like guards are gonna be like giga hard or whatever, because it's actually really hard to like sneak up on somebody like this.
Now, if the player enters the cone and isn't in cover, they probably don't get immediately spotted. Instead, the guard's awareness of the player starts to grow.
Yeah, in real life, and you're that guard, you're just opening up right there. You know, there is no awareness. It's like, motherfucker, what are you doing? Up. But you know, again, it's just another system for to allow the player a little bit of wiggle room.
Speed at which this meter fills might be slower if the character is further away, or only in the guard's peripheral vision, or in low light, or crouching down, or staying perfectly still. When the meter tops out though, the guard will know exactly where you are. It's also important to note that guards can be aware of more than just the player character, such as open doors, interesting objects, or dead bodies. This can be used to make interesting plans like traps and distractions, but it can also help give the impression of intelligence and awareness. Now, simulating hearing is a different problem. When you make a sound, like firing a gun, walking on a loud floorboard, or throwing a stone, the sound will be given a distance.
Okay, so from my understanding, a lot of like simulated hearing in games is literally just like a circle. Like he just threw a thing, and then that thing has like a sound radius depending on the surface he threw it on, of like some radius or whatever. Now, let's say he threw that thing on like the concrete. Maybe the radius or whatever, the diameter is going to be like 3 times as big or whatever if he threw it on the concrete versus the grass. This kind of worked the same way in Splinter Cell, because I think one of the games they had like a sound meter. They had a stealth meter for sight and a sound meter for sound. And I think that was the one game where they're just like, no, there's too many meters. Like 2 meters, the player. I thought it was cool. All right, because I just no-life the game. You know, trying to keep track of like the visual meter and the sound meter. I thought it was pretty cool. But they did away with that or whatever, so.
Related to the volume of that noise. Any guard who is within that distance can then be told to go check out the source of that sound. However, a straight line between the sound and the guard won't work, because we expect noises to be muffled by walls. So the typical solution is to use the game's pathfinding system, the same tech that allows an enemy to find their way around a world without bumping into objects. Make the sound travel across that, and you'll more realistically capture the way sound propagates through an environment in real life. That's the gist of things then, but more complex stuff might be included in certain games. For example, in Thief, guards can have second-hand information about the player based on what other enemies are up to. And in Hitman 2, Enforcer characters are way less perceptive of Agent 47 if he's facing away from them, which gives disguises more power. Links to more detailed technical information can be found in the description beneath this video. When done well, this system should create a pretty realistic representation.
Oh my god, is this Splinter Cell 1? Oh my jeez, this thing looks dated, dude. Oh my god.
Of a human's visual and auditory perception.
Or is this Splinter Cell 3? Like Chaos Theory.
You can then make educated decisions about where you will be safe using your real-world knowledge of how sight works.
Stealth games just have a better vibe if the majority of it is done at night, you know? If you're trying to be stealthy in the day, yeah, it's more convenient for the game devs to like add like more shit to the level for you to hide behind. I get that, but like it's a different vibe when everything is like either in like some sort of like the morning or the dusk or just at pitch black at night. You know, you could have either a full moon or no moon. Oh, that shit just hits different, you know? Like if you're trying to sneak around in like the broad daylight, it's just like, please, come on.
In different light conditions, or how sound might be muffled by a wall. But there's always going to be a certain level of ambiguity for the player to deal with, which can lead to friction and frustration. I'm sure you've played a stealth game where you thought you were totally invisible, but the guards saw you anyway. So to help players make sense of this stuff, there's a few smart ways that devs can make these perception systems more obvious. The first is helpful interface elements. Even way back in Thief, the developers knew that it was tough for players to understand how lit their character was from a first-person perspective. So, there's a light gem at the bottom of the screen to show your current visibility.
Oh, that's like a faded... It either fades black or gets really lit up. That's like alright, but the whole gradient thing, it's like mid. It's like it kind of works, it kind of sometimes doesn't work. It's like, oh my god, I thought I was like in a more dark space and he still saw me. I think like the solid meter with like a line in it, like this is how much light, this is how much shadow, and like you want the little line to be like always in the shadow or whatever. That's like you're 100% you're invisible, or even if it was like a percent or something, like you're 100% invisible. I think that was like better than like this little faded gradient thing.
And in Splinter Cell, the awkward challenge of knowing how much sound you're making.
Oh, this was the one. Was this 2? 2 or 3? One of these. This, like the sound, I thought this was awesome. I mean, he's like, it's awkward, but like it's awkward in the beginning, but like once you get the hang of it, it's like, it's not that tough.
Is helped by a visualizer on Sam's heads-up display. Also, most games have some kind of detection indicator on their interface, which mimics the guard's awareness meter from earlier. This helps the player know that they're about to be made, and sometimes even shows you the location of the guard who's seen you. Next up is using animation and audio to help communicate a guard's status to the player. A guard who is idly lazing about might suggest that they have pretty weak perception. But a suspicious enemy with their weapon raised will be way more alert to potential threats. Audio barks also help you know that the guard is starting to become aware of you.
Oh, the wall knock for Metal Gear. Oh man, I remember like doing this in the beginning when I very first played Metal Gear and I didn't know like shit about anything. I would just like run up to a wall and just start knocking the shit out of it and then just run away. Or whatever. Ugh, I had no idea what I was doing.
Then there are refuge spaces. These are places in the game world where, in normal circumstances, you are unambiguously hidden. That might be the high-up gargoyles in Batman, or areas of long grass in Assassin's Creed, or crates and cupboards in Hitman. These give you at least one place where you can scout and plan from a position of total safety. Another big solution is player favoring, which is the art of handicapping systems to bias the player. As Splinter Cell Blacklist programmer Martin Walsh says, it doesn't matter what the NPC can see or hear from a simulation perspective. It's what the player thinks the NPC should be able to see or hear.
Ooh,
So
that's a good little quote. It's like whatever I perceive should be happening versus like in real life, like people are just noisy motherfuckers, dude. Even if you're like a highly trained like Navy SEAL, Giga super spy, like all that jazz, it's like, bro, you're still noisy as fuck. Come on now.
his game, a guard's hearing is reduced by half when they're off screen, because it feels unfair to be heard by someone who can't even see.
Yeah.
And in The Last of Us, enemies typically raycast.
I mean, but that's why games like Splinter Cell and I think a lot of other these games, that's why they had difficulty sliders and like other challenges and like achievements and shit. Like, what was it? You can either, and wasn't it in Splinter Cell? You could like, weren't there like speed runs or whatever? I think you could do speed runs in that version of Splinter Cell of a level. You could either do speed run stealthy or speed run like noisy with the gunplay. Yeah.
To Joel's head to determine line of sight, but that changes to his chest when he's crouching to let him peep over cover without being spotted.
Ooh.
And then the biggest help of all, as discussed earlier, is a fuzzy detection system. If you were immediately spotted when you touched the guard's vision cone, that wouldn't feel very fair. So it makes sense that guards take a few moments to become aware of your presence.
Yeah, he's not gonna see that motherfucker floating away in that balloon
before being totally alerted. Now there's one final and rather bold solution to this problem, and that's to simply reveal these systems to the player in the
Ooh.
excellent side-scrolling sneak 'em up Mark of the Ninja.
Sneak 'em up? I didn't know that was the name of a genre. Sneak 'em up. Shoot 'em up. Sneak 'em up.
The guard's perception is about as unambiguous as you can get. Their vision cones are displayed on screen. The ninja is either in shadow or in light, and that's shown on the character's sprite. And when you make noises, you can see them emanating from the source as big round pulses. This is also shown to you before you even make the noise, which is helpful for knowing whether your noisy distraction or sneaky getaway will be successful.
That's actually cool.
With the info on screen, there's no arguing about what's happening in the system. You're either in the cone or you're not, and that sound either reached the guard's ears or it didn't.
And I think it's worth it to point out that like there's no one correct way to do like all these detection systems. Like you can't really apply one detection from one game to another game because it just doesn't feel good or whatever, or it feels too cheesy. So I think it's perfectly fine for every like sneaky game, stealth game to have their own version of like detection systems. And not only to like use the like what's been done in the past, but maybe try to like add something else. Like you don't have to necessarily invent the wheel again or like try to change the wheel, try to reinvent it. But you know, maybe try something else, you know?
And so Ninja's binary perception system can be paired up with a totally binary detection system of instant awareness. Though there is a slight analog fuzziness on the very edges of the enemy's view cones.
Is someone up there?
For a slightly more nuanced take on this, check out Shadow Tactics: Blades of the Shogun. Here, the vision cone is split into 3 zones. The bright green part near the enemy's face is the danger zone and leads to a pretty instantaneous detection. In the dark green part, you can stay hidden if you're crouched down, but will be spotted if you stand up. And the dotted part is for refuge zones like bushes and high grass where you will always be invisible. If you do trip the view cone, the whole cone will fill up with yellow, and if the yellow part touches your character, you're spotted. It's a very elegant way of displaying all the necessary information right there on screen. Of course, it's a lot harder to show this stuff in a fully 3D game. The
Yeah.
original Metal Gear Solid solution was to simply photocopy the game world into a top-down 2D representation on your radar and then draw the vision cones on that. It's a sort of hand-wavy solution that's still being used in games like Deus Ex: Mankind Divided. But it's not impossible. The Sly Cooper series has guards with torches that cast obvious pools of yellow light. If you find yourself inside the light, you get spotted, but otherwise, you're safe. Cartoony, yes, but also immediately readable.
Yeah.
The most important thing, though, is the experience that these different perception systems lead to. When the system is made analog and ambiguous, the player must evaluate the environment with an immersive
The night vision of Splinter Cell. Oh my god, this is so good. And it still is. I'm still waiting for him to make next Splinter Cell. Come on.
and realistic understanding of light, shadow, distance, and sound. And it also gives the game a certain level of tension, where you can never be 100% sure that you're safe. And I think this fits quite nicely with the core stealth fantasy. These are games where your power doesn't come
What? Why are you showing Doom in like a stealth video? Doom is the exact opposite of stealth.
through sheer brute force, but only through your ability to hide from the enemy. So having your sneaky status be fragile and fuzzy reminds you that you're always at risk of losing your tenuous advantage over the enemy. As Thief programmer Tom Leonard says, it's about getting the player's heart pounding by holding them on the cusp of being found. And it's especially important to hide this stuff in survival horror games that borrow stealth elements. In a game like Alien Isolation, it would be rubbish if you could see exactly where the xenomorph was looking. A huge amount of fear and anxiety is derived from your shaky knowledge of the alien sensors. But
Bro, I tried to play that game, Alien Isolation. I just couldn't do it. I was too like stressed out or whatever. Like trying to figure out where the alien is and whatnot. I was just like, and I'm playing the game in broad daylight, you know? I was just too fucking stressed out. But it's still a good game though.
making the system completely obvious has its own advantages. It puts way more power in your hands and allows you to play with a huge amount of confidence. You can feel more like an apex predator, luring enemies into traps or sneaking in for a silent kill. As Ninja producer Jamie Cheng put it, as we were iterating, I found that I wasn't nearly as interested in guessing whether a guard would hear me or not, and way more interested in creating an elaborate death trap. Of course, the predator feel can be achieved through other methods, like those aforementioned refuge zones and by giving the player a bucket load of gadgets and superpowers. But the more accurately they can predict the enemy's perception, the quicker the player will get to that experience.
Nice.
So that's it for Lesson 1. Stealth game guards see and hear through a system of simulated eyes and ears, and developers can create very different experiences depending on how much of that system they surface to the player. Come back next time for more deep dives into sneak 'em up design. And if you subscribe to my channel, you'll get access to the new episode as soon as it goes live.
Woo.
Hey, thanks for watching. I hope you're all doing okay in the midst of this awful coronavirus pandemic.
Okay. Yeah, dude, that was a great little video. That just re-emphasized like all the little mechanics of what makes stealth games, in my opinion, like really good, really fun. Whenever I'm trying to play a stealth game or whatever, I'm just trying to relax and just sneak around. It's a different vibe. And I'm just waiting for next Splinter Cell, honestly. So, yeah, I thought it was a good video. I'm going to watch the rest of them or whatever in this little series. So, stay tuned and I'll check them out. All right, so another good one. See you guys later. Peace.